I want to talk real quick about a defensive handgun. I always get a lot of questions about handguns. What should I pick? What's best for me? What do I do? And when it comes down to it, every handgun in your collection should have a reason for being there. And just like in my collection, I have guns that are range guns that are cheap and easy to fire. Typically something like 9mm that's inexpensive, easy on recoil, that you can put a lot of rounds through. I have firearms that are set up for a carry conceal that are smaller, easier to carry, and then I have firearms like this that are my defensive handguns. Now, what makes it defensive versus the other ones that I mentioned, like a carry conceal or a target weapon? Well, number one, for me, a defensive handgun needs to be large. It needs to be full size. That full size is going to help absorb some of the recoil. Second, it needs to be longer, with a longer barrel, so you have better accuracy and you can shoot further distances. Your typical carry conceal with maybe a 3-inch barrel, accuracy tends to fall off after 10 yards, whereas this is a weapon you can easily fire 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 yards, probably quite accurately. I've actually only shot this out to about 20. Another big important for a defensive gun is an accessory hand wrol. If you're using this for home defense, you're probably going to want some kind of a light or a laser to help out. You don't want to be having to use your second hand for holding a flashlight. So an accessory rail is always a plus. Another big plus for a defensive handgun is not to have a safety. Now, I'm a big believer in having a safety on your target pistol. If you're going to be at the range, you want to make sure you're maximizing safety. You want a safety, something you can click on as an added layer of protection in case something does happen. Now, with a carry conceal or a defensive pistol, you really don't want a safety. It's one thing that, number one, can trip you up in an intense moment of confusion and needing to fire in a hurry, and having that gun not go off when you want it to can kill you. So I prefer a defensive gun and a carry conceal not to have a safety at all. Just one less thing to worry about. Now, another big deciding factor in a defensive gun is caliber. Now, your carry conceals, you're typically going to go with a medium caliber, something like 9mm, maybe 40. They are pretty concealable. Most 45s, being the bigger caliber, you tend to have a bigger, and at least a thicker. They don't make as good of a carry conceal. I like the 45 for a defensive round. I know the 40 is more powerful, but the 45 is just this big, slow moving train that really hits pretty hard. So I do like that 45 as a defensive round over the 40. I do like carrying the 40 because it is such a powerful round, but for defense, for some reason, I just, I like that 45. It just really, when you go out with steel gongs, it just really has a different feel to it, because it is such a big projectile. So choosing your caliber is pretty important. Defensive guns, typically people choose 9mm, 40, or 45. And, contrary to what some people do believe, the 40 does have more energy than the 45. The 40 is a smaller bullet, but goes at a much faster speed, therefore it has more energy. So it is something to consider when you are picking your calibers, that the 40 is technically more powerful. Another important thing to look into is whether or not your gun is rated for plus P. I typically only choose firearms that are rated for plus P, and I do that for a reason. I want to make sure that if I want to have a magazine loaded with plus Ps for a really, really bad situation, that my gun can handle it. Now, say if you own 3 9mm and only one takes plus Ps, you could have a mix-up, in a, like I said, a home defense situation. You could mix up, run plus Ps in a gun that's not rated for it, and have something really bad happen. So I try to always pick firearms that are plus P rated, and everything I own is plus P. Pretty much everything Ruger makes is plus P. The SD40 I have is plus P, and this thing here, is plus P as well. So it is something to consider. And the plus P rounds, the overpressure rounds, are, considerably more powerful than their counterparts, and are a good idea to have a magazine or two of them laying around for dire emergency. If not, in your home for home defense when it really does count. So, with all those things, those are what you want to consider with a firearm when you're picking something for defensive reasons. Of course, you're going to look for different things for concealed carry and for target guns. Other popular calibers I know for defensive are .357. Some people pick the .44 Magnum. I typically stay away from them just because of the expense. .357 is pretty expensive, and same thing with a lot of the Magnum rounds are just really expensive, and they can be difficult to get a hold of at times as well. So I do like sticking with the calibers that are typically used by military and police, which is 9, 40, and 45. And I know actually some departments are actually going back to 45, because I know a lot of the female officers complain about the 40 being a bit much for them. So I know there's actually a couple here locally that are trying to get back to the 45 over the 40, just to make it a little easier for them. Typically, what do people choose for defensive guns? A lot of people choose SIGs. This is the P250 here. It has a polymer frame, so it's not for everybody. Some people prefer and will only choose guns with a steel frame, so that is something to put into your consideration. Are you willing to accept a polymer frame for your defensive gun, or is steel a necessity? If steel is a necessity, a lot of people tend to like and go with the 1911s. To me, polymer doesn't bother me, so I'm fine with a Glock or one of these SIGs or even Rugers. I love the Ruger line. I think they are a great value and really just built well. I'm a huge Ruger fan when it comes to handguns. So, all those considerations, you need to find a gun that works for you. In my case, what we have here is a 45. I like the caliber for defense. It's a full-sized, good accuracy, fits good in the hand, ammo's plentiful. It's inexpensive enough where I can afford to go out and practice with this and afford good defensive plus P rounds for it to have in the magazines. For example, I only keep a good hollow point round in the magazine for around the house. So it's these two that I got loaded up with hollow points here. So make sure not only that you can afford the target stuff, but you can also afford the defensive stuff. The defensive stuff can be pretty expensive, and it's very difficult to stock up on at $25 or $30 a box. And you're not getting those in boxes of 50s. It's typically 20 per box. So, as I said, caliber's good, size is good. Great gun. The action, it's a double action only, which is really good for me. It's got a nice smooth trigger pull. This gun, ambidextrous safety, which is a big plus for me as a lefty. No external safety on the firearm whatsoever to deal with. This pretty much, once a bullet is loaded, this thing is ready to go, which I do like. Simple to use, nothing for it to get caught up on. Holsters well, doesn't get caught up in clothing. Smooth. We get the accessory rail. Overall, great choice for me as a defensive handgun. And we're all different guys. We all have different size hands. We all have different tolerances for recoil. We all have different tolerances for shape and size of handgun. So choosing a defensive handgun is really a personal choice for you. But if you take these things into consideration, you can make the process a lot easier and make sure that you have something that will be a good match for you. Because, like I said, guys, you want a firearm for a specific purpose. There is no firearm that's perfect for everything. There isn't. There never will be. The target shooting guns are always going to be good at target shooting. Concealable guns are always going to be concealable. And then the big defensive handguns are going to be just that. Tough, rugged, and built for defense. So with that, I hope that helped you guys when it comes to making your decisions with firearms, and hope you enjoyed.